admit students, and this is going to be a recorded session. As we admit students, I see a lot of familiar names of students we admit, so happy to be able to see all of you in person today. And we have a record number of applicants, and getting in wasn't easy. And congratulations to everybody for that. So I'm going to dive right in and provide some high-level kind of guidelines on what the fall semester will be like, and then our grad RAS staff, Elise and Tori, will fill in more the details. First of all, as many of you probably have read in the news, Penn is expected to be back on campus, and I'm hoping that all of you will be able to get here in person. But I also know that there are visa challenges. The situation in China has vastly improved, but we know that there are continued challenges in getting visa appointments in India, and we are closely monitoring that situation. But that said, as PhD students in your first year, chances are you have to take classes in order to clear some requirements like your quals and your WPE1. And we want to make sure that for whatever reasons, you are still able to take classes. And so our current plan is we will try our best to accommodate all remote learners. And by remote, that could mean either you are not in the country, you are in somewhere in the United States or in Philadelphia, but for one reason or another cannot come on campus. So our focus will be more on classroom lecture recordings and less on synchronous sessions. And if you are taking one of the big classes, so for example, I think in CIS, ESE, a lot of the first year PhD classes are held with classes with master students that would include more than 100 students. So for most of that big auditorium classes, we have already equipped with recording capabilities. So you'll be able to follow the lectures even if you're in a different time zone. We did try a bit of hybrid last semester, and before we found that did not work well because of time zones and other challenges. So our focus will be more on teaching to on-campus students and then recording for students who couldn't be on campus. Now, we also have a number of smaller classes, and I know in, for example, material science, CBE, there are smaller PhD classes in the first year taught by faculty on the chalkboard. We are in the midst of upgrading our classrooms so that we have recording capabilities. And our fallback solution is a mobile card solution where TAs will help the faculty record. And last but not least, given that we've taught online for a while, we have a lot of videos, so I think that's going to help. And definitely, once you sign up for a class, make sure you reach. If you think you're not able to come in person, make sure you reach out to the instructor to have more details. Now, if for whatever reason and I think this is fairly remote, but it can happen in that you are matriculating in fall, but you cannot be on campus, and there's no class, not a single class that you can take remotely, then individual graduate groups, your grad chair, your coordinators, well, we will help you find alternative class, or in the worst case scenario, hopefully this doesn't happen, you can defer for one semester. Again, this is only for students who cannot make it in person. Next slide. Couple of more details on fall 2021. As many of you know, the COVID situation is vastly improving in the United States. Vaccinations are happening at rapid pace. In fact, starting this week, we have allowed all our faculty, staff, postdoc, and graduate students come back for research. Up to this point, it has only been certain research personnel can come in if they're in wet labs or things that need in-person laboratory activities. But starting this week, with the loosening of guidelines, we feel confident, and we're inviting all of our PhD students to come back. This also means that if you come in fall, whether you are in a department or program that does wet lab or dry computational stuff, very likely you'll be able to come on campus. And obviously for us, we're all very excited to come back. But in in graduate rest, and I think this is true for all of our grad programs, we will continue a combination of in-person and remote advising in fall. You are, however, required to be vaccinated. We haven't heard yet from the university how they plan to check for vaccination and vaccine passports and so on, but I'm pretty sure come fall, there will be a plan for that. And if you come from overseas, keep in mind you also have to vaccinate. And Penn just released the guidelines on vaccination. If you are in a country that does not have US vaccines, but you have access to a World Health Organization approved vaccines, please, I think the recommendation we have is for you to take those vaccines wherever you are before you come. And the list of approved vaccines is growing over time. So for example, last week I checked AstraZeneca and Sinopharm on the list, and I know Sinovac and others are in the pipeline. So please go to their website. They link to the World Health Organization website that has a list of vaccines. And any questions on vaccines, you should redirect that to the email that's available on that website. Last but not least, if you're an international student, we would like you to arrive by the drop deadline, because really, if you come anytime after that, and particularly if you need to quarantine and so on, by the time you can come on campus, half the semester will be gone. But that said, because we allow for remote learning, you can still matriculate and take classes from wherever you are. One thing to note is there's a distinction between arriving in the US so that you have a valid F1 visa versus coming on campus after you are fully vaccinated. So if you're an international student, we would require that you get here latest by 2 weeks into the semester. By getting here, we mean arriving in the United States, so you have a valid F1 visa. You can, however, be quarantined, stay where you are until you get fully vaccinated before you come on campus, and that could go past 2 weeks. Next slide. All right. So what if you cannot come here in person by fall 2021? I hope this applies to nobody this semester. This is my hope. If all of you get here by fall 2021, we will be so happy and we'll celebrate. But we know from last year, there were some students who couldn't come in. And here are the guidelines for you. And this applies to international students. If you are subjected to travel bans, touch wood, hopefully not, or you experience visa delays and you undergo some kind of a security checks that's going to take you past the 2 weeks at drop deadline, you can take classes remotely and earn credit towards your PhD. In fact, last year for 2020 admit, we have many students who finish all their coursework in the first year, right? So this is doable. Unfortunately, based on the university guidelines, which is obtained from the US government, there's some constraints. So for example, if you are from Cuba, Iran, North Korea, and Syria, apologies here, but we won't be able to allow you to take classes remotely. One good news is we are, however, able to pay a stipend while you're overseas. However, because you do not have the legal right to work in the US yet, this is a non-service stipend, right? This is not a typical RA kind of thing. And in order to receive this non-service stipend, you are, however, need to maintain full-time status from wherever you are. And full-time status is defined in engineering as signing up for 3 CUs of regular coursework, excluding independent studies, and I'll get to that in a bit. And you should also not have any employment overseas, right? So if you are, somewhere in China, India, working for Alibaba or Tata, and even if you're taking classes, that would not be considered full-time status, and we would not be able to pay the stipend. So this non-service stipend will be paid once a semester at the end of the semester. This is because dealing with overseas payment is tricky, and doing that on a monthly basis is not the best thing to do. So as opposed to students who are arrived on campus and could receive a stipend on a monthly basis, if you're stuck somewhere taking classes remotely, the non-service stipend would be paid once a semester at the end of the semester. Last but not least, and this is a really important one, and Penn Global, our Office of Research Services, has stressed upon us again and again, is that if you do not yet have a valid visa and you're overseas, then you should not start doing research remotely. This is due to export control regulations. If you do that, we have to put you through export control waiver and so on. And please, if you have any faculty that puts pressure on you to start research remotely before you get visa, send me an email, because they're not supposed to do that. And the university has laid out very clear guidelines on that. And this is not so much for the faculty, but to protect you. By the time you go for visa interview, they're going to ask you, what have you done in the past few months, right? And if you have started research without getting export control regulations, that can really jeopardize your visa applications. So please keep that in mind. You are, however, able to discuss research papers with your advisor, but please do not start actual research work till you have your valid F1 visa. All right, so that's all I have, and I'm going to hand it back to Christina.
Thank you, Dr. Liu. So next we'll talk about how you can prepare to matriculate in fall. I hope that Dr. Liu answered most of your questions, especially about how you can get started with research. I will also encourage you that we have a live Q&A session at the end, towards the end of this meeting, but you can feel free to utilize the chat feature if you have questions that you want one of the panelists to answer. All right, and without further ado, I'm going to pass it on to our graduate affairs team.
Good morning. I'm Elise Edwards. I'm the director for graduate programs here in engineering.
And I'm Tori Fu, and I'm just trying to get our slides together. Okay, and today we are going to go over the academic options that you will have available for you for the fall 2021 semester.
So as Dean Liu just went over, as an incoming student, you probably fall into 2, potentially 3 categories. For our US students, US citizens and permanent residents, we are hoping to see you here in the fall. And as Dean Liu mentioned, the arrival date or the drop deadline is September 14th. So matriculate and start by September 14th. If you are an international student and you're already in the United States, perhaps you did undergraduate work here or a master's program, we also are expecting to see you by September 14th. You should be transferring your I-20 to Penn. And as an international student in your first semester, to maintain your full-time status, you must take 3 courses. And it's pretty much the same for an international student if you're out of the country, same date expectation, you will need to be full-time. You can request a travel letter from your department, and that is something that might help with your visa process. So if you have any questions about that, please reach out to your graduate coordinator, and they can provide you with what we're calling a travel support letter to help with your visa process.
Okay, and to go into the remote option just a little bit more that Dean Liu had spoken about. If any students unable to attend in person, we are still hoping to have some classes be taught remotely in fall 2021. Students would be able to view recorded sessions of the classes, and a few classes may have synchronous Zoom sessions if the instructor has that technology and capability to do so. International students that are not in the US may, of course, be registered remotely as a matriculated Penn student and take the classes remotely. But no research is allowed, so no independent studies, no dissertation style research. Reading papers, as Dean Liu said, is fine, but no physical research can be started. These students do not have to take a full-time course load, so they can be at 2.99 CUs, which sounds a little funny, but that's considered part-time, anything 2.99 and below, so under the 3 CU, if you do not have valid F1 status.
So while we are hoping to see all of you in the fall, we do understand that there might be whether it's a visa delay issues or travel ban or something that may prevent you from joining us, you can still defer. And the way to do that is to first, of course, accept our offer and then contact your graduate coordinator for program approval. You may defer for a semester, so we would see you in January 2022, or you could defer for an entire academic year and join us in September 2022.
Course registration for matriculated students is open now through August 31st, which is the start of the semester. Courses can be added or dropped up until September 14th, like we have discussed, but we're hoping that all registration should be done by August 31st if possible. If you're not registered and you don't know what to do, ask your coordinator. As Elise already mentioned, your coordinator really is going to be your go-to person, and as I like to say, your new best friend as a first-year student, because they're going to be able to help you. They're going to be able to guide you. Why your coordinator, you ask? Each program handles registration differently. Some coordinators may assist you in getting into your courses. Others may be able to just guide you on what to be able to pick and help you through the system to be able to register. Some courses require a permit to be able to register, and your coordinator is going to know who you should contact. This is more so through courses maybe for bioengineering that are over in the med school that someone needs to take, and you would be required to have a permit to get a course permit registration to be able to get the registration for a different school through the medical school. Your program is also going to give you what we call advisor sign-off. So you will go over your courses with your coordinator, with your faculty and academic advisors, and then they will say, yes, you may register for these courses, and they grant you the sign-off. And then, of course, course selection, which we keep talking about, is the deadline for dropping and adding courses, and that is September 14th, which is the magical day that we want everyone here by as well.
That's, excuse me, that's it for our little section. I do want to mention that we will be holding new student orientation for all incoming master's and doctoral students on August 24th. It will be virtual, given that we have such a large group, and we are still working out the logistics of being back on campus. So that event will be virtual, but you will also be meeting with your individual departments, and you'll get more information about that as we get closer to the start.
And I just want to mention one last thing, that Elise and I will be holding advising hours through the summer session. It will be on Wednesday mornings, and anyone that has accepted the offer to matriculate into Penn already, you have been added to the email listserv for your department. So you will be receiving emails from us going forward. So if you would like to join us for advising, you have some questions that you're not quite sure where to turn to, feel free to hop on. And if not, I'm sure you're going to see emails from us very soon if you haven't already. So you will be able to start reaching out to us as well. Welcome to Penn. With
Welcome
that, I'll hand it back over to Christina.
Thank you so much, lady.
So Christina,
we have a
I do want
question?
to quickly address, there was a student that sent me a private question, which I think is important to address. So that's regarding class registration. The student is trying to get into classes that's already full. And so one thing to keep in mind is a lot of the first year PhD classes are taken together with master students. And some of them are hugely popular. CIS 520, machine learning comes to mind. Some of the classes that are very full, they do have a wait list policy, but keep in mind, we will always prioritize PhD students, even though it's not spelled out on paper. And what happens is these classes always have some attrition. We expect some students to drop. And what you should do is, if you're not able to get in the class, please make sure you let your grad coordinator know, and they will help you get into those classes. In my best recollection, I don't remember PhD students not being able to get into the hugely popular classes. So there is a special queue that's not publicly available, but we do let PhD students in with higher priority.
Thank you, Dr. Liu. So now we'll hand it over to Mr. Killian Finney, who is our Director of Building Operations, and he'll talk to you about our operations and health precautions for fall.
Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, everyone. I hope that you're all doing well wherever in the world you are. I do want to take the time and first thank Christina and Boone for inviting me to talk about some important topics related to our building operations and health precautions that we have undertaken since the pandemic began. So just a brief overview of the evolution and currently where we are with building operations. So the current occupancy hours for our buildings are 7A to 11P, 7 days a week. The university is currently and has been using a symptom checker. It's a web-based app called OpenPass. And basically it's a self-attest. And if you self-attest with your symptoms and you have no symptoms, you would receive a green pass on the OpenPass system. And you would show that pass to guards that we have at designated locations at the entrances of the buildings. If you wake up before you come to the buildings on a given day, and unfortunately you are showing symptoms and you fill out the symptom checker, you would get a red pass and you would not be permitted to enter the buildings on that day. As I mentioned, we do have designated intake or entrance locations at all of the buildings where there is a security guard to ensure compliance with not only the OpenPass system, but also to make sure that you have your pen card, which is your university ID card that you may use to enter the buildings once it has been programmed. There currently are social distancing measures in place. Locally, just within the last week or two, they have been reduced from 6 feet to 3 feet. So there has been an evolution of the COVID precautions. We do follow very closely in lockstep with federal, state, and local guidelines. We do anticipate that there will continue to be an evolution with some of the building operations, and they are communicated via school administration to our community once those changes are made. Another important topic that I want to just briefly talk about in relation to the pandemic that we fielded a lot of inquiries about is our indoor air quality for the buildings. So the university and the school, we do adhere to an industry standard, and that is called ASHRAE, and that is the American Society of Heating, Refrigeration, and Air Conditioning. And so there are guidelines, there are thresholds that we must follow in order to meet indoor air quality, depending on the type of space within a given building. So some of those standards do include requirements, the minimum requirements for filtration of the air and the amount of air that is moved through a space every hour. Most spaces within our buildings do have centrally controlled ventilation systems. And for those of you that are familiar, that typical delivery method is called an air handling unit, or an AHU for short. The really good point that I'd like to emphasize about our ventilation systems, especially here at C's, is that due to the fact that most of our spaces also have labs connected to them, our air handlers provide 100% outside air. So what that means is the air comes in from the outside, it's filtered, it's tempered, it's delivered into the spaces, and then it's exhausted. There's no recirculation of the air in the spaces for most of our spaces due to the presence of the labs. In a little bit, I'm going to show a chart that'll explain a little bit more about a visual, a little bit more about the double filtration system that we use here at the school. This double filtration system really exceeds the industry standard when it comes to indoor air quality. So you're going to see this MERV rating. You may have heard about this in the news, and that's an acronym for the minimum efficiency reporting value. So the double filtration system that we use in our buildings entails a MERV 8 pre-filter and a MERV 1314 final filter. So this is that chart that I had mentioned. And so in the first row, where you see MERV standard 1-4, that row is really what most residential locations have in terms of air filtration and air quality. And you can see under the typical applications column, the types of spaces by the MERV standard. So our initial pre-filter stage is a MERV standard 5 to 8. And you can see in the typical applications, the types of spaces that you would see a MERV 5 to 8 rated filter. And then the final, the double filtration, is at a level 13 to 16 on the MERV scale. And as you can see under typical applications column, that is superior air quality, akin to hospital healthcare grade, pharmaceutical grade. I'm happy to report that all of our spaces have a 13 as a minimum final filter. And during the pandemic, we've moved many of our spaces, increased to a 14 on the MERV rating scale. Another important topic during the pandemic that we fielded a lot of questions about has been about cleanliness and housekeeping and the concerns about the possible spread of the virus through surface contact. So as the pandemic began, the university developed an enhanced cleaning approach where there was more of a focus on some of those touch points like railings, like doorknobs, like elevator buttons that our housekeeping teams have been asked to make sure that they are disinfecting. And that disinfectant that we use here at the university is on the EPA's list and of approved disinfectants for use against the COVID virus. So the two main disinfectants that we use are Virex 256 and Vital Oxide. Some of you may be familiar now with these names of the disinfectant. We have used Virex 256 in our buildings for many, many, many years. So this predates the pandemic for us in terms of the level of disinfectant that we use. We feel very good about the disinfectant that we are able to use, not only use in our buildings, but also provide to you. So if you would like your own disinfectant, we will provide that to you. And many of our departments during the course of the pandemic have received either wipes or spray from our office so that they can have the comfort level of being able to wipe their own surfaces using this disinfectant if they so choose. Cleanliness is a shared responsibility, so we do need your help. We do want to make sure that if there is an issue when it comes to cleanliness that you see, that you raise that issue, that you bring it to our attention. As I mentioned, we will also provide disinfectant. If you are in locations, if you're in labs, if you're in office spaces on site and you would want some of the disinfectant for yourself, we will provide that to you. We want you to use that. We want you to help us make sure that our spaces are nice and clean. And then in terms of our quality control program, when it comes to cleanliness, we do, and housekeeping managers also perform daily and weekly inspections. And we use a web-based app, which is called Go Spot Check. And we are the domestic leader in terms of volume for usage with that quality control application. The School of Engineering is the biggest user in the United States when it comes to the quality control checks that we perform on a daily and weekly basis. Our housekeeping management team also utilize a fluorescent marking system, a spray that they will mark surfaces with that cannot be seen to the naked eye. And then they do that both pre and post cleaning to make sure that housekeepers have performed the duties and tasks that are asked of them when it comes to wiping surfaces and cleaning and disinfecting locations. And then additionally, as part of our quality control program during the pandemic, we have included ATP sensing. So we do adenosine triphosphate, which really allows us to pick up any biomarkers of bacterial problems that we see on locations, on surfaces. For us, we have used this on locations in labs, on lab benches, lab surfaces, and it's really allowed us to perform a more focused cleaning in some of the areas that have been highly populated during the course of the pandemic. And so that concludes the information that I have to share with you today. I will be monitoring the chat and eventually the live Q&A for any questions that you may have related to these topics. And with that, I'm going to turn it back over to Christina.
Thanks so much, Killian, for that presentation. I hope it assures our incoming students that we are putting their health at, as priority when we're returning back. I'd also love to put you in contact with my residential building manager, but that's a separate conversation. So we'll move on now, and we will talk to Jeremy Spohr, who's the Assistant Director of International Student and Scholar Services. Jeremy, you can unmute yourself.
Okay. Yep. Can you hear me? All right. Okay. Well, good morning or good evening, everybody. My name is Jeremy Spohr. I'm the Assistant Director of ISSS, and I'm the liaison to SEAS. So I help Dr. Lou and Elise and Tori and all the coordinators, help with our international students to help them get here and maintain their status once they're here, and help them with their work permission, their CPT or OPT. So I'm going to just go over a few things with you here, and then we'll have time for some Q&A if you have questions about immigration stuff, which I'm sure you do. So hopefully all the folks on this call have been admitted, and you got a 9-digit admission ID, and you were able to get into the ISSS database called IPEN, and you were able to put in your passport and your demographic information and apply for your I-20. It's possible we might have 1 or 2 J1 students out there. That's where you would apply for a DS 2019. J1 students are very rare, though. It's less than 10% of Penn International students are J1. So we mostly focus on F1s. So hopefully you have applied an IPEN, and that's either in process, or we have issued you an I-20 already and sent it to you as a PDF that you can print and sign. If you have dependents, you can include their information, and we will do documents for them as well. Okay, next slide. And our processing we've been really working hard to hold it steady at about 3 weeks. Maybe occasionally it's gone a little longer, but especially this spring, because of all the changes to programs and students who were deferred, it has really increased our workload to adjust everyone's documents. But hopefully you've gotten your documents already. This information, we're not shipping documents this year. Luckily, immigration has given us a reprieve from that. We don't have to send you originals, so we're sending you a PDF. Probably in the future, possibly January of 22, we will have to return to actual hard copies, and then we will do shipping. But luckily, this year we've escaped the shipping issues, which is a huge weight off our shoulders, because that's a huge challenge to ship all these immigration documents all over the world. Okay, next slide. So here's kind of an overview of the process, and hopefully you've all been accepted. Everybody on this call should be an accepted student, and hopefully you've submitted your application for an I-20 in IPEN, and we have emailed you that I-20, and then you have to pay the SEVIS fee with a credit card. You can pay that online, and you have to make an appointment at a U.S. consulate or embassy in your country, and appear in person to apply for that F1 visa. And we'll talk more about the situations specifically in India and China and maybe a few other countries, but I just want to go through the process. Then hopefully you get your visa, you've got your I-20, you've got your admissions documents from Penn, you're able to get a flight and arrive here sometime in the, say, early middle of August, so that you have a little bit of time to quarantine and maybe get shots if you need them, so that you're able to start classes on August 31st. And ISSS has been working closely with C's and all the other schools at Penn to really emphasize that cutoff date of September 14th, which is 2 weeks into the semester. If you're unable to physically arrive here by then you will have to defer your entry to the US and possibly arrive in January, or maybe not till next year. Some folks may be stuck, but we will adjust your documents for that. So don't panic. If that happens, we will adjust your I-20. We will give you a new one with new dates. Then after you arrive in August, you need to register your arrival with ISSS so that we can tell the US government, yes, this student is now here and they're attending class at Penn. That's a very important step that people will do in August. This year, we're going to do that using our IPEN database. We will not meet you in person, unfortunately, because as similar to what C's is doing, we will have some virtual orientation sessions, but we're not going to be meeting hundreds of students in person like we normally would. But hopefully, in another semester or another year, we will be able to meet in large groups and enjoy each other's company a little better than being virtual. So that's kind of the process. Most of you are probably on, step 5 or 6 or 7, maybe. You're in that area now. You've already applied. You've gotten your I-20. You're trying to get a visa appointment. You're trying to get tickets to get here. So, okay, next slide. So here's a bunch of links for you. And we really want to emphasize that all the details of the the medical details of quarantining and which shots will work and not work. I really want to emphasize that you want to work with the Penn Student Health Services and the information that Penn as a university is providing. But it sounds, from what Dr. Liu said earlier, it sounds like they are accepting many vaccines from around the world. So we want to emphasize that if you have a vaccine available to you in your country, get it. So we want to get those shots in people's arms so that, for all of our benefit. And it looks like that Penn is going to accept those WHO vaccines. So that's good news. Now, I do want to address a little bit of the situation in China and India, because I know that's a majority of our students, and I know that there's issues with getting visas in those countries. Right now, it appears that China is really opening up a lot more rapidly, and people are able to get appointments. If you have an appointment upcoming and you don't have your I-20 yet, we will do our best to get it to you quickly. But we may ask you, ISSS may ask you to provide the receipt to give us the date of that appointment. Because I'll be honest, we've had a few students saying, I need my I-20 right now, I need my I-20. And then we say, okay, when's your appointment? Well, it's July 15th. Well, no, then it's not that urgent. There's people that have them on, May 25th that we really have to get the I-20 to them. So we're trying to prioritize based on that. So we may ask you for a date, the email from the consulate or embassy to say, yeah, this guy really has an appointment on May 27th, so we got to get him an I-20, and we'll do our best to do that so you don't miss it. So that's kind of what's happening in China, as far as we know. And now for India, unfortunately, we understand that the situation in India is still fairly serious, and that most things are closed. It's very difficult to get appointments and to travel. We are very sympathetic to this, but there really isn't a lot we can do, because these decisions are made at the US federal government level. It's not up to, it's not up to ISSS, it's not up to C's, it's not up to Penn. If those consulates are closed, they're closed. And there really isn't much we can do to get it open and get you an appointment. So we're kind of in the wait and see mode now, as we were last year with with China, it's kind of reversed. You know, last year India was open, China was closed. Now it seems like we've flipped. Now China is reopening, India is closed. So it could be that some of you are not going to get visa appointments until October or November. Okay, it could happen. It may happen to a lot of you, and that's okay. Don't panic. You can hopefully start some classes online, and we will adjust your I-20 date for you, and PDF you a new I-20, and then you can hopefully arrive in January. Some of you may end up deferring for a year. There are students who tried to come last September and they could not, and now they're coming, this August. So it could happen to some of you, but we will help you work through that as best we can. And I guess with that, I'll kind of stop there, and we'll go to the Q&A to see what questions primarily probably myself and Dr. Liu can answer for us. So, or do we want to go to, we have other things first. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I just want to make one note. Since Killian brought up the topic of building operations and health precautions, I know that some of you may have those same questions about your potential new home. So I wanted to give you information about off-campus housing. They are an excellent resource for finding your home in Philadelphia when you're a student at Penn. So please refer to the website provided here, as well as the email address. When you also go to the website, you can find information about their most recent webinar where they did answer some questions. This is, again, an excellent resource for finding your home, for negotiating leases, anything having to do with securing your personal residence while here in Philadelphia. So please refer to this resource. Now we can move on to the live Q&A. So we are a really small group here, which is why this session was formatted as a meeting, so that we can see all of your wonderful faces and we can talk to you directly. So you are welcome to unmute yourself, raise your hand if you have a specific question, or you can continue to utilize the chat. Either way, we're going to designate about 5 to 10 minutes to answer any questions you might have. Keep in mind, we also have a few graduate coordinators here to join us. So you might be able to have some of your program specific questions answered. So I'll leave it to you guys to open the floor.
Any one of you have questions for us?
Will we have information sessions with our individual programs at some point this summer?
Yes, so it's closer to the beginning of the semester. In addition to the school-wide virtual orientation, individual programs will hold a smaller orientation. I think some may be virtual, some may be in person, depending on the size. But that said, if you have a question that is time sensitive and cannot wait till beginning of semester, I would say the best thing to do is to email your grad coordinator. I sent out a link on the chat just now. You scroll to the very bottom. That should take you to their email and you can contact them.
Thank you.
I'm just returning to this slide about off-campus housing in case someone wants to take a screenshot or jot down this information for further reference.
Hello, can I ask a questions about visa?
Sure.
Yeah, thank you. So I'm wondering, since I think bioengineering is kind of a sensitive field of study right now, and does it entail a higher chance if I apply for F1 visa in bioengineering? Does it entail a higher chance of being checked by the US Embassy in China?
I wouldn't say, I think I'm just answering your question in the chat, same question, but I'll answer verbally so everybody can hear. It's really hard to say. There are some folks that we observe majors and we think, oh boy, that guy's going to get checked. And then they don't. And then there's other people that we think, oh, that's okay, you won't get checked. And then they do get checked. So it's fairly random, to be honest, unless it's, nuclear physics and things like that. But yeah, hard to say, possibly.
Okay.
And then I see the second part of your question was about the length of the visa. Probably the visas for China are going to go back to 1 year. That we did have that period where they loosened it up and they were giving people 5 years. And the Trump administration cut that back to 1. So it's possible that the Biden administration will switch it back to 5, but we don't know. So I think you want to plan on 1 year visa.
Okay.
And for anybody who's physically in the US now and you're transferring, say, from a master's program or from undergrad to the PhD program, I would strongly urge you not to exit the US this summer, to stay in the US this summer.
Okay.
And transfer directly to Penn from whatever your other school is. It's a pretty simple process, but don't go home for 2 months. I mean, I know you want to, it's hard, we all want to see our families, but the chances of you having some other virus or visa issue, it's the safest thing is just stay put in the US. If you're on OPT, work on OPT and then transfer to us later in the summer. Or if you're not doing OPT, then just do the transfer now and we'll pick you up and we'll, create your Penn I-20. But if you can not exit the US this summer, we are recommending don't exit. So the big lesson was learned, unfortunately, in the spring. This lesson was learned the hard way by a lot of Indian students. Okay. February and March and April, a lot of Indian students left and they just went home for a visit. And then they got caught when there was the virus spike in India and now they're stuck and they can't return. So we urged a lot of, I have a couple of students that I know personally that I told them, I know you want to go see your parents, but I'd advise you not to go. And they say, oh no, everything's good. I got a ticket, I'm going. And now they can't come back. So it's really a tricky situation. So if you're here, please, it will immigration wise and virus wise, try to stay in the US. So
yeah, question about, go ahead, Jeremy.
No, I was going to say, yeah, go ahead. Next question.
Yeah, there's a question about 3CU for full-time status. So let me try to address that. If you already have a valid visa, or if you are on campus already in the US, or if you're not an international student, then full-time status means you can take classes and add some independent study with your advisor. So for example, a typical first-year student may take 2 classes, coursework based, and then sign up for 2 credits of independent study. So that's normal. However, if you are an international student and you're still stuck overseas and you are not able to get your visa, then you have 2 options. One is you can just take 1 or 2 classes and have part-time status. You won't be able to get a stipend in that case, but you are free to work other internships or other jobs in the meantime. The second option is you have to have a full-time status taking 3 CUs, but because you're not allowed to start research remotely, we don't want you signing up for independent studies or dissertation credits. And if you do that, we will actually take those out of your course registration. So you should take instead 3 regular coursework-based classes.
Okay, thank you. So I'm transferring from another school in the US, so I can still take dissertation credits is what you said, right?
Yes, and that ties in to Jeremy's question. If you're transferring an I-20 from one university to another in the US, you are still a valid F1 student, which means you can, okay.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. That's a good situation to be in, to be honest, because your F status does not get broken that way, right? It's just, you just switch schools, same CVIS number, but new I-20 that says University of Pennsylvania, but same CVIS number, same CVIS record. Your current school just has to, when you do the transfer forms, it will just, they send it to us electronically, and then we open it up, and then magically you're a Penn student, and we can print you a Penn I-20. So it's pretty simple, and that preserves your F status. Don't have to pay the CVIS fee again. It's pretty easy. So if you go to another school, just transfer. Very smooth.
Yeah, and not only that, Fahad, not only can you transfer, then you are treated as a kind of local student for the course registration. So you could do the normal 2CU coursework, 2CU independent study. So whatever I said about international students stuck overseas without visa doesn't apply to you.
Okay, thank you. Well, this is maybe subjective, but do students usually take 2 CUs and some dissertation credits, or 3 CUs very demanding?
Well, this is really program by program. I've seen students take 3 and got all A's. It's really, and sometimes seminar classes are less work than regular classes, so it really varies. But keep in mind, most of our master students take 3 CU as their regular load, right? Coursework, so it's doable.
Okay, thank you.
So
go ahead.
All right, someone posed a question privately, and I hope that either Dr. Liu or Jeremy can answer. If we decide to waive a PSIP, do we receive an equivalent increase in stipend?
At least Tori.
I can answer that. No. The answer is a PSIP is the student health insurance, and they're not connected in any way. You have to have student health insurance either through Penn, or you have to provide documentation if you're covered elsewhere, but that does not have anything to do with your stipend. I mean, the stipend amount will be the same.
Thanks, Elise.
So Elise and Tori, there's a question about students who are transferring classes from another school, maybe from their master's program. So how should they do that?
Transfers usually come to me. So first, what you're going to do is you're going to get the documentation together. I can grab the link in a second to our handbook. You will get your documentation together. You will turn it into your advisor and your department. This all happens in the fall term generally. You have to be here in courses and after the September 14th deadline. So that way you have an official Penn transcript with us. You'll then fill out all the documentation and your coordinator will send it to me. Let me grab that link.
So there's also a question about, if let's say student comes in with an external fellowship like NSF graduate fellowship or similar, what should they do? Should they inform GradRes? What's the steps here to get them funded?
What was that?
If they're coming in with an NSF grant. If they are, I would say first talk to your department. Your department is going to have to know that information. And after that, you will more than likely need to work with our business office to have them either have the information, or you'll be setting up an external third-party payment with the Student Financial Services Office. If that is a lot for whomever is asking that, send me a quick email. My email address is vfru for Victoria Fru, and I can put that in the chat as well. It may be a little easier for you to email me directly.
Okay, we have a couple of questions accumulating in the chat. Dr. Liu, were you going to address one of them?
Yeah, I was going to briefly add to what Tori said. We found that some fellowships are really quick and easy to establish. Sometimes we had company fellowships that take a while, but keep in mind that doesn't mean we won't pay your stipend or tuition, right? The school will just fund in the meantime while the fellowship's getting set up. So one way or the other, you should be fine. So there's a couple of there's a question on whether transferred classes can be used to satisfy qual requirements. I think this is department by department. Some departments like CBE have at the end of first year, there's a quals, and the faculty will get together to quiz your knowledge on the coursework. There are others like CIS that will, it's largely based on coursework, and I'm in CIS, so I can talk a bit about that. I think the bar is quite high for you to actually count some other classes elsewhere towards your WPE1 requirement. That doesn't happen a lot. Maybe Britton can correct me if I'm wrong on that.
No, you're correct, Boone. If you were a master's student here and you did take one of the finals, I have seen the faculty member will go back and look at how you did, but it's very difficult to count the coursework from a different master's and then also count it as a one of the qualifiers. So you can get the course credit, but it's a little bit more difficult to get the qualifier credit.
Yeah. So that's at least 2 data points. No, yeah, go ahead.
How about for master's level courses taken as an undergraduate student?
Do you mean for transfer credit into CIS directly or just transfer credit into your PhD degree program?
More so into the PhD degree program.
It had to be part of an awarded and approved submatriculation program, and that is Penn policy, not engineering policy. So if you were part of a submatriculation or accelerated master's program at your previous university and your transcript shows that information, then it can be considered.
Would the best way to determine that be on a department by department basis or through somewhere else?
Through me really is the thing. It's just, it has to be on your transcript. So if you took something just as an extra class that was graduate level, but it's on your undergraduate transcript, it cannot count, and that's Penn policy.
Okay, thank you.
There's a student that asked if they're in the US and have a visa until 2022, can they travel?
Well, I would say you can, and you don't need to apply for a new visa, but then I would still urge you not to leave the US this summer, because there are, using the India example again, there are folks that have valid visas, but now because of the travel virus situation, they're still stuck. They can't come back. They have a valid visa, so they're not trying to get an appointment, but they just physically can't, get a flight, and they can't get entry, and it's a challenge. It's up to your tolerance for risk. If you have your I-20 and a valid visa and you're going, it depends where you're going too. If you're going to, I don't know, South Korea, then you're probably okay. Or if you're going to, the UK, probably okay. But we've seen these virus spikes happen around the world, and then people get stuck. So I would still urge caution, I think, for the travel,
Elise and Tori, there's a question that says, are we supposed to get any signatures from our advisors before registering for classes?
That is specific to your department. Not a physical signature, like an actual ink signature on anything, but you should more than likely either have your program coordinator's approval or your faculty advisor if you have one already. Again, all programs do this a little differently. So check in with your coordinator first and see what you need to do to be able to register.
I have another tip for folks that just occurred to me. As far as your vaccinations go, I was in a meeting a couple of weeks ago with the student health folks, and they said that it's very important that as they would for anybody, any year where students are coming in, you have to show that you have your shots, okay? Whether it's, tetanus, mumps, MMR, the general shots that anyone would be required. Americans too. But this year, they're requiring that proof of COVID vaccination as well. Okay, and it sounds like it's open to the WHO approved vaccines. So you really, and this is not something that ISSS or SEAS does. This is a student health thing. And so I would urge everybody to get your vaccination records, both for, the general stuff, measles and tetanus and whatever else you have to have. And you have to upload those onto the student health insurance site, right? Either you're getting the PSIP or you're waiving out of it. So somewhere in there, I don't know where it is, but it's probably pretty easy to find. You're going to have to upload your vaccine, proof of vaccine for your regular general stuff and for COVID. So think about that, because student health is going to put vaccination holds on people's ability to register for classes. Okay. And I don't know exactly how that works, but they have the power to do that. And they do that for students in regular years, not even no COVID, right? You just didn't get your shots. They're going to hold you up. Or you're going to have to walk yourself over there and get the shots in your arm before they're going to let you, before they release that hold. So that is going to be I think, a big challenge for all the Penn students, the Americans too, everybody. Got to have your shots to be able to do these things. And this is going to all happen, end of August, beginning of September. It's going to be a challenging time. So get those documents together, get on the student health website, and at least find where you have to upload the stuff so that they release those holds. So I would not want to, ISSS is a challenging office, but boy, I wouldn't want to be at student health this August and September. They're going to be going crazy to try to track down everybody's vaccine records. But I have seen, now, I don't know if some of our biomedical engineering students may do things at the medical school or at the hospital. Do they do that sometimes, Boone or Tori? Like, do they do things with School of Medicine? Some of the PhD folks, I don't know.
Bioengineering, yes, they will sometimes work a little bit more with med and some of the other faculty members there.
Yeah. So I don't know if they're going to have any extra protocols, but I know certain folks from medical school, dental school, they have to have, and this is again in a regular year, they have to have other vaccines that they can be put on hold for if they don't get them. Because I had that experience with dental students in the past that did not have all the boxes checked, and student health said, no, you're not, and they had to go over there and get shots. So, this is, I'm just kind of a tip for everybody on the vaccine stuff to be ready to show this to student health. Because ISSS can't, I had the students say, well, can you tell them to lift the hold? I said, no, you have to go over there and do whatever they want you to do. So, yeah.
Great. Thank you for engaging in this conversation. I hope that most of your questions were answered. We're going to close out today's session. First, I wanted to look at some important dates. This has been up here for a while, so I assume you've all read it. So what I just wanted to highlight for you is September 14th is a really important day. That is the add drop deadline, which Dr. Liu mentioned before. That's the time when international students need to arrive on campus. It's also the deadline for you to submit a deferral request. So if you are an international student who is still hoping to join us in the fall, you have until September 4th to do so. If you can't do so, please then request a deferral, or you can take courses remotely. And so let me just, before we close out, I'd love to introduce you guys to some of the graduate coordinators who are on this session. Grad coordinators, you're welcome to unmute yourself and welcome your incoming students.
Are we going in any order?
No, feel free to start.
Hi, everyone. If you are part of the CIS incoming class, welcome. There will be a registration email going out in early June. So for everyone that is worried that they may have missed it, you have not. In the meantime, I will be removing the holds on your registration. But if you would like that done quicker, just send me an email, but I am in the process of removing it. Still reach out to your advisor though. And yeah, we'll be in touch more in June, and I'm looking forward to seeing all you in the fall. Welcome.
Hi, this is Liz from ESE. Welcome, and I'm looking forward to meeting all of you. As Britton said, I will be sending out a notice or some information for you in June about the same things, about the program and what you can do to get your plan together. So I look forward to emailing you and receiving some feedback from you. See you soon.
All right, thank you, coordinators. Am I missing anyone? All right. Well, if you guys would like some more information, please be in contact with your graduate coordinators. I also like to say that the Graduate Admission YouTube channel has a lot of information. We will be posting this recording to that webpage very shortly. So if you want to review it again, you can refer back to that website. That page. I would encourage you to subscribe so that you get an alert anytime something new is uploaded. But other than that, we look forward to seeing you in the fall, and please be in contact if you have any additional questions. Take care.
All right. Bye-bye, everybody. Thank you.
Bye. Thanks.
Thank you.